Let's do it that way, shall we? So obviously Fnatic did actually win the tournament. So actually Mini Jake, as he was called, obviously, when he did the episode with us, we obviously told him he couldn't pick Fnatic, but spoiler, obviously he was setting up that they were maybe super sick and he was super impressed with the roster, etc. What do you think of that, Gio? The fact they actually won the whole tournament?
This was kind of like a real humbling moment for me because I predicted Fnatic to lose their first game.
The Sentinels one, that's right, yes, of course.
One. So, I fucked up at the first hurdle, but I thought that it was really impressive. I think the point at which I became genuinely seriously impressed was when they beat Na'Vi. And not just them beating Na'Vi, but beating Na'Vi 3-0, because by the time we got to the quarterfinals, I had Na'Vi Loud as my prediction for the finals. So for them to overcome Na'Vi in that fashion, I was like, oh shit, this is really serious. I think the way I've always seen Fnatic, and I've said this to a couple of people over the last few days, is people who are like, oh, I've always been a Fnatic fan. And I'm like, I've always thought Fnatic are a good team, but I've always felt like they lacked something. I could just never put my finger on what it is. And I feel like now they feel kind of whole. It feels like they have every element that they need. And I think, to be honest, having Leo and Chronicle on the team has made such a big difference. Leo, obviously, he got MVP a couple of times in a couple of their games that they played, but is just an outstanding player. But Chronicle, I think the flexibility that he brings has been such a huge component for them. Everybody keeps joking about the fact that in the finals, he played 5 different agents. And if you look at them all side by side, in and of themselves, they make their own composition because they played across all the different roles and stuff like that. So that kind of flexibility on the team, it was just awesome to have. Has been so useful for them. And I think being able to see them come back from the 11-3 scoreline on Icebox is such a testament to not only the IGLing of Boaster, but the fact that the other 4 players can also pull themselves back from whatever tilt or disappointment or the feelings that they had, the mental situation that they were in, and trust each other. And I think especially for a team that, yes, okay, they're still playing with a 3-man core that they had previously, but these really, really integral parts of the team are being represented by new players. That's a huge thing to be able to do. That's massive. And so they genuinely have really seriously impressed me. So yeah, I'm sorry for
it's all good.
predicting against them from the beginning.
I mean, the hilarious part about that, by the way, isn't just that she predicted against them. It's that of all the teams she chose now to go in on Sentinels. That was because obviously historically, you were trying part of it was you were trying to make up for being perceived as a hate. So you were like, look, it's fair to pick them now. I'll pick them, and then of course they lost anyway. So brilliant. Cheers. Also, I will say this actually
they lost. The Sentinels changed part of the team that I had a big issue with. So I was like, okay, they got Sassy and Pancada, that's fine. Turned out that Loud didn't even fucking need Sassy and Pancada to do well, but that's a whole other topic.
Yes. Just also to reference the mini episode, he did say, which I did put as the title, that he thought Leo was the best initiator in the world. But if you listen to the context, he meant as in eye tester behind the scenes. He didn't mean literally the title he had. Because I know loads of people just read the title as usual and were going, what? Spitting up all their drink and so oh, what the hell's this? First of all, that's aged the finest wine possible. And then as Gio said there, what I love about that is this guy actually, Leo, should be the most ego player in the game then. Because if you know anyone in games like Counter-Strike, there's a famous thing that star players do where they'll say a line, and this is how you know they've gone to the diva level where they're not even in reality anymore, is they'll sometimes for real, there's famous players should I even say the names? I think Shocks once said this in CSGO if they know, where he once said some mad line the best team would just be if I could just clone myself 4 times. The joke is if the Leo guy did, apparently he could just play all the fucking positions as well. Brilliant. I mean, you have to do it 5 times in his case, but yeah, not bad, eh? So what do you think at peak of this Fnatic run? I mean, everyone, let's be real, of all my past episodes, I noticed everyone in all the past Fnatic lineups, they always were very highly rated and people behind the scenes thought they were very good. But as she said, they weren't the same players in the team. It's a fundamentally different team, right?
So I thought Fnatic would lose against Loud, and I thought it would lose against Na'Vi as well. But that's mainly me being more on the side of Na'Vi because I basically I was won over by Na'Vi when I saw Sugetsu and Xiao play just dominate last season, and that carried over as well. But for Fnatic, the most impressive player for me was Leo, because he was always, it felt like I didn't see him when he was on Guild. Like, I saw Guild, I saw them play, but I didn't get the like sparkles or the like the feeling that we get now with Leo in Fnatic. He could be like side to Durka in stats and just even overshadow Durka sometimes. And that for me came out of nowhere for Leo. So probably he was like a diamond in the rough type of thing. Fnatic polished it, and I feel like Fnatic not only picked up good players, but they also proved that they have super solid coaching, super solid analysis of their scrims, matches, whatever. And yeah, I was proven wrong, and I don't regret being proven wrong, so to say. I believe in them, completely now for upcoming matches. And
sorry.
Yeah, no, you can go on. I
was going to say, I will agree that I think the point that like Durka didn't look special in this team, in this tournament, not because he did badly, Durka did amazing, but because the rest of the team were so good as well that they all looked kind of on equal footing, which I think is kind of like, that's a big difference between how Fnatic used to look, where it was like Durka is this venerated like thing, and it's like, okay, there's still some slight, even there was that one tournament where like Alfire was doing really well because it was like a Raze meta, you know, but still Durka's always been the one who's been held to that regard.
For sure.
Whereas now I don't think you can necessarily like look at Fnatic and be like, Durka is notably better than everyone else.
I mean, put it this way, if before this tournament, someone had said Fnatic wins the tournament, history would have said Durka must be the MVP of the whole thing, like, hands down, easily, whereas, like, as you say, like, you could have given it to the Leo guy. That wouldn't be unfair.
He did his job. Durka did his job well, and that's the important thing, is, like, you want a player, even if it's your quote-unquote star player, even if it's your duelist, you want a player who does their role well, and everyone else is also doing their role well. And I think that's the thing. Like, Durka did his job great, but he didn't have to encroach on other people's jobs to make up for their lack, you know?
Yeah, you could see that in the strats versus Sentinels, for example, where like Sentinels, they looked like they're on a good path. But when Fnatic comes, it's like they are Sentinels on steroids and everything is super tight. It's like metal bolts on a bridge. Like nothing will just shake out. And it feels like everyone knows clearly what to do and clearly what happens in the server at all times, it feels like. And that's probably what then results in everyone everyone performs well on the roles. For example, Chronicle, doesn't matter the agents, as long as it's been taught exactly what to do, how to do it, and obviously, you know, he's gifted to, maybe not gifted, but obviously good at the game, so he can read the game and adapt on his own. And that's something I bet Fnatic really teaches to their players, like being able to adapt on the fly as well.
Okay. One thing, even though normally I'm not as much into this is more like Theon on Fire's angle, if people know. I'm not normally as much, I like narratives, but I'm not really about like the movie narrative where it's like the romantic one, because most of those like aren't real. That's why movies and anime exist, to sort of like have these crazy, but I saw actually that thread that was done that was about like Boaster's history of like because I knew, like I've said the story on the one past, like I only knew this guy, like he wasn't even a name in CSGO. I only know him when I went to the smallest CSGO event I ever worked at, which was a UK one. It's just that they had the money to pay for like people like me and Henry G and Sponge and stuff. And we just did it, by the way, to be nice, because it was a cool company, like a UK company, and they were paying the money. So when we all went, like the joke is, like none of us knew who any of these players were. Like that was the level Boaster played at in CSGO. People don't know. He was essentially irrelevant. Like he never went to a big tournament. He was never even in a million miles close to getting to a major or anything like that. And then I saw in this thread, I didn't even know this dude. Apparently then he was grinding like League of Legends, trying to get into like the XL team as a sub. So this guy basically is just one of those people who's just mega dedicated. Like in this case, apparently it wasn't even the game. He was just going to make it one way or another, that is quite a cool story, because the difference is that is something I think actually if you look at him in the game, I would even say this guy clearly is not just a genius at games. He's not the guy, like if you were measuring all the metrics and have the best hand-eye, he wouldn't have any of those things. He actually just seems, quite frankly, like a normal dude who just has a really awesome mindset to compete and has leveled his game up. And in this case, by the way, here's a tip if you're a young player or a casual player out there. If you aren't like the super skilled, cracked out player, don't try to be. Why not become like an in-game leader or a support player or something? Like, you could actually, if you figure out the other aspects, because I thought the coolest part of that little thread was the idea that he was like working on all sorts of side things as well and trying to find like innovative ways to improve, or like just study and like board up on what all the other teams are doing. Like, that's a great way to play the game as opposed to just grind like infinite hours trying to shoot a headshot, guys. Like, I actually think that's really good for like young players. Like, we always need more in-game leaders, more like supportive elements. Like, those are the players where a lot of that's just hustle, guys. If you put in the effort, you could be that player. You can't really practice 10 times more and be like better than fucking like artists at shooting people in the head. You're just not going to be like, there's like 3 people can do that and he's one of them.
Yeah, Boaster's story is super interesting and very. I don't know if you saw, but there was like a screenshot that was being shared on Twitter that was from a couple of months ago of somebody on Reddit had said something like, "Oh, you know, like if Fnatic still fail to achieve something, they're going to have to look at like whether Boaster is actually the guy to lead them." And Boaster had replied with a "Remind me 1 year."
Oh, the actual like thing that makes the post come back, like the bot command, right?
But this I think it might have even been Boaster who shared this tweet, but it like that was like 3 months ago that this post was, and so it's like he didn't even need to get to the 1 year, but he's like, you know, like you know, Boaster can't lead a team into getting a victory. But no, I agree. I really, really admire his work ethic. I think like. It's going to sound so lame, but also just on a personal level, as somebody who works in a tumultuous industry, right? Like on the broadcast side of things, like sometimes just seeing somebody grind through a number of different iterations of what it is they're trying to do before they get their huge like breakthrough victory, whatever.
You might relate to that in some way. I see, maybe in your own career. Right?
I mean, I've worked in a few games now at this point, right? So like I've been there, but like I just think that's a really nice thing. But I think people get invested in that story because generally they can see something.
Oh, for sure.
That means something to them in it as well.
Oh, mate, the obvious answer is if you did make a movie, like the naive fan would think you just take the best player. No, you don't make a play about this guy. This would be the movie. This would be an amazing. This is like Rocky, but for fucking esports, basically. It's such a fucking sick story. What do you think, Peak?
I agree. I feel like the way I look at it, it's reminding me of when I tried to become a coach in Overwatch, and before that, even when I would try to go pro in Heroes of the Storm. I basically couldn't sleep during the night sometimes when I was in college or university. So I wanted a new game. I didn't even have my nickname Peaked back then. So installed the Heroes of the Storm, ended up doing quite well, but I played a lot as well. And it reminds me of that like growth, so to say. And it's very rewarding when you look back on what you've learned, what you've done, and I feel like Boaster is not even done yet, and I don't know how big he's gonna get in terms of like the character Boaster, not the like fame or anything, but I want to see how far he can take it, and I don't think he has to care about the haters or anything like that, because he is obviously not caring about them. And when you also come from that background where you failed a lot, you get comfortable with failing, and I feel like that's one of the most important parts, especially in esports, where you get comfortable with failing, because otherwise you end up like C9 and you just drop 2 players after a few months.
As if you just leaned right into that. Fair enough. It is a good analogy, obviously. Sure.
Yeah, or like there's many other teams.
Yeah, of course. No, it's just the one right on everyone's mind, of course.
I mean, it's more like stage 1 2022 100 Thieves.
You know,
where
right
like
after.
They literally like drop people like every 2 weeks.
There you go. Yeah, by the way, I'll also say as well, another thing this points out, which I noticed both of you actually yourselves have just referenced, is another part I think is really misunderstood about the esports industry is maybe now it's possible because of how professional things are. Someone could just start the game now, be good like a year from now, and then be in a top team like a year and a half from that point. But actually, if you ever look over the history of esports, most people who are pro in a game played a previous version of that game, or like a prequel to, or, you know, this is a sequel to that, or another game in the genre. And it's usually actually like you make all your mistakes and you learn in the first first game, and then when the second one comes out and you've already got your skill set, then you're primed to maybe have a career. So I would also say as well for people, the other thing about the Boaster story is don't just give up after a year. You know, like you actually have to put in some quality time, and maybe like in the case of Boaster, maybe CSGO wasn't the game for you. Maybe this one is. Maybe League would have been. Who knows? But you also never know till you try. You have to sort of like he says, you have to do it and fail to know whether it was for you or not, I think.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.